This conference will now be recorded.
That's the correct words you want to hear.
Different, you know. That worthy guy is fast. I was like, that guy's fast.
I found it.
Oh, but I'll take it, yes.
Capital T like Tom, capital C like Charlie, capital G like George, underscore 4058.
Perfect, thank you.
Just give out the Wi-Fi password. Meeting, it's fine. And somebody's actually got to physically come in here.
$6:30.
All right, we'll call the meeting, the Cottage Grove Joint Fire District Commission meeting to order at 6:30. Someone's taking notes, is that you?
Yep.
Right? Okay, great. We've got ourselves online and we're unmuted, right? We're all good to go there.
Did you get in, Lorraine?
Yes.
Sorry,
I got
I
it.
didn't mean to.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Everyone's connected here. We've got a quorum, agenda was posted,
Yep.
public appearance, anybody?
What did the village ever do with the 20,000 for the building maintenance fund? Did you fund it or not?
We have not taken action on it. It's on, it's agenda number 9, or no, 8, excuse me, tonight.
But the question was, is the
We
village
did not
board,
fund it.
Not yet.
so I can take mine out?
You can do whatever. Can't comment on what you should do with yours. Okay, any other public comment? Great, we'll move along then to our minutes from November 25th. Questions, comments, or a motion?
Motion to approve as presented?
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, any further discussion on the minutes? Having heard none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstained?
I'll abstain.
Okay, motion carries. Chief's report.
All right, so far this year, we're at 39 staff. That's 11 officers, 3 operators, 24 firefighters, and 1 probationary. Department's currently at 21 calls for service. That was as of 1/22. Had a few calls since then, so it's tracking out to be about 0.95 calls per day. End of the year would be about 348 calls for service. Breakdown so far of calls: 1 for mutual aid, 10 for the village, 7 for Pleasant Springs, and 3 for the town of Cottage Grove. Got the graphs for the breakdown as to what times and days it's happening. updates on the apparatus. Tender 2 had a small coolant leak, which was repaired. The fire extinguisher maintenance has been done on all the trucks in the building, no major issues there. Training for December was Stop the Bleed and active shooter incident management training. Training for January was the employee assistance program, workplace harassment, and medical evals for all members. February is going to be air consumption and SCBA fit testing. We lost 3 members in January. 1 joined a full-time fire department, so he couldn't commit to the time and training requirements. The other 2 just couldn't commit to the time requirements. Kind of common sometimes. Department received a grant from Alcivia along with a match for a partner company for a total of $4,000 to purchase Tough Coat. It's a rescue system for like the grain bins over at Alcivia there. Department's also partnering with Hydrite to review some of our hazmat stuff and pick out equipment that we might need for hazmat responses. And yeah, they're helping us develop some of their training and stuff too. So.
Any questions for Chief on his report? Great, we'll then move to the annual report for 2024.
So the annual report went out to everybody a few weeks ago. Did anybody have any questions on anything that's on there or anything with it?
I'm just impressed with the number of training hours that, you know, 40 plus people have to do at almost 4,000 hours. It's, to your point about the time commitment.
Yeah, I think people don't realize how much it really is when you get into it, especially, you know, we do the trainings and then 368 calls is what we finished with last year. So there's definitely a lot of time commitment to it. And, you know, to your point, the training that we had this year is actually down from last year. I think we were closer to 6,000 hours last year. So, so a little bit less this year than we did last year, but still quite a bit.
Chief, is that the difference between the number of hours of training? Is that just because something came up that's fairly extensive training that everybody had to do? Or is it just because the number of staff have done their training and it's maybe every 2 years they have to do certain training? I'm just curious.
Some of it is, so we only require 1 monthly training mandatory. So, you know, last year, a lot of people were coming to all of them, even though they only had to come to 1. This year, some people are doing more like 1. And last year, we also had 3 structures that we required to burn down, which took a lot of time and training. So we were out there all the time training in them, doing the actual burns. That added a lot of hours there too. So.
Thank you, Chief.
Yep.
Any other questions for Chief?
False alarms, have they decreased, staying the same?
It's kind of about the same. I mean, it's, seems to be kind of a comes and goes in waves. You know, last year we were having a ton of the false alarms at like the commercial buildings, where it was like the same building, we had like 15 false alarms in the year, which was a lot. But this year it's more like ADT in your household. A lot of people are getting like the household systems, and those are going off while they're like cooking food, and they maybe don't realize they have to answer the phone and acknowledge it. And so what happens is they accidentally burn food while they're cooking. ADT tries to call them, nobody answers. They call the fire department. We show up and they don't realize that we've even been called. So we knock on their door and they're like, "What are you guys doing here?" Surprise! It's on fire, or no, I accidentally burned food. You know, that happens quite a bit.
Does it only happen once at that location?
Usually after that happens to them, once they realize that,
Yeah.
they have to do that in the future. So, but it seems like there's a lot of people adding those systems now. So.
I see you have a lot of goals and initiatives. Are there any priorities that you have?
Have to, sorry, let me pull it up.
Yeah,
Yes, you've got-
let's see if I ever mentioned it. Short report.
I didn't print it out, sorry.
Good, Chief, I got it.
These guys-
Rather than you guys straining your eyes.
Thank you.
All of them.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the goal is to get them all done as soon as possible, but I guess out of all of them, probably the most important one right now is staying on top of the adequate timely response on the calls and adequate staffing for the calls. Those are our big ones that we want to hammer out and make sure that we're we're really staying on top of that. We're still within our norms for what PAA is recommending for our response times. But they did flip a little bit, but they're still underneath the normal acceptable level. So we'd like to get back to where we were last year, which is why that's one of the goals. And then the number of people coming to calls, because we were at 47 people last summer, and now we've slipped down to 39, just people leaving for jobs or other things. So when you lose people, it takes a little bit longer to staff the truck. So just really hammering on it to keep it up to where we were and keep it to where we feel is a better level than what the standards necessarily are. So.
Anything else? All right, let's move on then to the quote for the furnace repair at ESB.
I guess my recommendation would be, we don't do anything at this point because it's working.
Knock on wood.
Was it not working, which is why we got quotes?
That's why I called and Chief called me that it wasn't working. He came down, fiddled with it. And I haven't heard from anyone since that it's not working, but
No,
it's over $924. I guess at this point I wouldn't do anything.
Is that something that the furnace is getting close to its useful life? Or is
that
it?
one was replaced
No.
2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
3 years ago.
They don't make them like they used to.
No,
From the work order that I read, that's the unit that sits out on the roof for the conference room, the big meeting room. What they wrote is that bees had gotten into the unit and kind of made a nest right on top of one of the control boards. So they thought maybe that was having some intermittent issues there. They cleaned it off, but I think they're not sure if it was damaged by that or not. So I don't know.
it's been
It's
working.
been working,
Yeah.
but the time that it's not gonna work, it's gonna be when it's 20 below out.
I know, that's the concern.
So,
Any further discussion on recommendations on what to do with the quotes?
I guess if the people that are in the building aren't concerned with it, hold off and see if it's righted itself. Otherwise, we probably know what it's gonna be the next time it hiccups.
What's that?
We probably know what it's gonna be the next time it hiccups, is that controller unit. It's the other thing I noted was the quote was already expired too, but on the 18th. So, but I'm sure they're still fine. I just said, hey.
Typically, High Tech's been really good to
Yeah.
work with and,
Yeah.
in our experiences and stuff, so I wouldn't anticipate, because we didn't take them up on their offer, so to speak, this time, that, well, we'll get you next time, kind of
No,
thing, so,
I'm sure they would.
yeah.
So no action?
No, it's working.
Okay.
Really, I hope so. I already got it written down.
Oh, okay, well, I want to keep it in.
We can table it indefinitely.
I don't think we need to take any particular motion, do we?
No.
Right, we don't even have to table it. Okay. No action. Okay, oops. Okay, the ESB repair fund. So we had further discussion back at the board level at the village. I think there's just some general questions on what's the difference between the funds that we put the $20,000 in each and the 3,000 that we put in for maintenance in the general ESB budget.
Maintenance would be getting the air conditioners ready for summer, the heating for having those serviced, and the generator.
And the elevator,
Yeah,
That's,
the thorn
get
in
me
our
started
side,
on that.
the thorn in our side.
yeah.
Excuse me.
Those are the things that we know happen every year.
Do you know roughly cost-wise, like what we're looking at, like the elevator? Just roughly, I'm not,
Uh, It's too much, whatever it is.
I think it's actually in the low couple thousands for a whole year, 'cause it gets quarterly, I think. Dave.
Yeah,
Maybe it might be a bit high, but it's, as Chris said, it's a lot for what they do. Yep, it works. Yep, the phone works. No, there's no obvious leaks to the hydraulic system, because it's one of those.
Because of course, that's extra.
What's
Of
that?
course it is.
That would be extra.
Yeah.
I think I'm the only one that uses the elevator.
It's there for a reason. It needs to be there.
I think that's pretty much it, what we do on a regular basis over there, isn't it?
Other than we put
Yeah,
in
it's probably,
extra in the fund towards the roof.
you guys have a cleaning service that goes there once a week too, I think, right?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Cleaning service, thanks.
I mean, cleaning services is its own line item on the,
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
and then we've got the building maintenance, elevator service is also its own line item. So that's this building maintenance line item, I think that folks were just wondering, maybe,
Okay.
maybe it would be good to have a structured policy that says these are the expenses that come out of the building maintenance fund of the general yearly budget, and then here are other things that come out of the ESB repair fund contribution. That was one suggestion. Another one, and guys, please chime in, this is based on memory
We
and
found
notes.
that it was
An-
20, yeah, go ahead.
Another one was, maybe do we set a minimum, so if, let's say we don't want the repair fund to be less than $50,000. So if it's at 50, nobody contributes to it, but we contribute if it dips below 50, or that's a threshold I just made up right now.
Where's the roof repairs coming into that?
Well, I think those each board would have to consider those when the request
But-
comes in.
Right now, anything that's left extra goes into that. We don't spend the $20,000, right?
right, unless this
It
board
doesn't
makes
stay
a
in the ESB repair
decision to
fund.
spend it like we did on the PFOBs.
Yep.
Yeah. Instead of
Mhm.
updating that, that's where it went. If we don't spend anything, that fund just stays there and builds.
And goes, and we would use it for the roof repairs.
Yep, I totally understand that. I think the thought for, at least from the village's perspective, was, do we set a minimum so that we know how much we're putting in?
Yeah, so that was the discussion about, committing that fund. Because if it builds up to whatever it builds up to, then you say, do we really need that? And the other part of the discussion was in regards to what are those things in the next 5 years, the roof in 3 years or 2 years or whatever it is. What are those big ticket items that we need to start to plan for?
You'll have a generator, you'll have a roof.
Yeah, and, you know, the way I look at it is when, you know, in 2 years it's generator, in 3 years it's the roof or whatever the timeline is kind of what we were thinking. And
Yeah, and they could both end up in the same year.
they could. I mean, part of the planning is just to have a plan though. So you-
But because of the fact we're not gonna preemptively repair the roof or replace the roof, whichever fits, or replace the generator preemptively, how do you plan for, okay, the generator might cost us $30,000 to replace it, say this year, but in 2 years or 3 years, it could be 35
Or maybe-
whatever.
Well, or the alternative is maybe you do plan on doing, you know, the generator in 2 years. I mean, unless it craps out before then, but I mean, the roof is gonna give at some point. It's already 30 years old, so.
Yeah, and whatever,
2029.
have periodic repairs to it
Yeah, I
now.
knew that.
as a leak shows up.
But I mean, we probably have, when those techs are up on the roof, they're probably telling us when they think you're probably gonna need it, and it's probably sooner rather than later.
Yeah, Chief Lang actually got an updated quote for the roof today. They didn't say a time as to when to replace it, but the updated quote as of today is $180,000 to replace the whole roof. So, and that's from Great Lakes. Again, that's who's been doing the repairs and maintenance for the last few years.
Yeah, I mean, I guess then I'd look at, you know, the question to them then, these professionals around the roof say, when do you think we should do this? They'd say today, of course, but really, hopefully they give us an estimate so then we can say, in 2028, we're gonna do this and plan for it. That was the idea of having a plan around that. We know things are gonna start to need to repair on it. Roof, generator, probably other things, I'm sure. Furnaces.
Overhead doors that get hit or whatever breaks.
And I think
A new
also,
refrigerator, a new stove,
Yeah.
you know, God knows. I don't know about that washing machine that you have for turnout gear,
Or, yeah, there's.
what the life is of something like that.
I mean, not
It
very
gets
long.
used pretty hard.
Well, ultimately, the ask from the village was a clear definition of this fund, this larger fund balance versus the one in the line item in the annual budget. And could we establish a fund balance, the target balance that we would say, we don't want it to go under this, but we wouldn't keep funding if it's over X amount. That's what our minutes reflect from the
Right.
discussion in that meeting.
and I think also from a finance standpoint, I think it's easier to track when it's a certain amount versus having kind of a fluctuating amount.
I guess I don't understand the fluctuating amount. I mean, for both of us, it's been 20K for, that's
So
What
years
we've all-
it had been 10,
Okay.
we agreed to raise it to 20.
the, because of the fact originally it started going up to 20 was because of the driveway was getting to be in such a bad shape over there that there was concerns as to whether or not the trucks
Yeah.
would continue to be able to drive on it without it totally breaking up.
Mhm.
So that was one of the reasons why it went up to 20K, because we wanted to at least replace most of the driveway that's out front, the entrances, not so much the north end here, but, and so, but because we haven't done it and we found other uses for the money, you know, that 20K that were more pressing, at least we all decided, you know, even us and your predecessors decided that, and that's where the money is going. But, you know, I guess from the town's perspective, if you want to set an ultimate, not an ultimate, but a self-imposed limit, I wouldn't be opposed to that, but at the same point in time too is, I guess, I would want to continue to fund it, you know, and I don't know what that's gonna do. I mean, we've got the money allocated to fund our portion this year. It sounds like maybe you guys have decided to go in another direction for 25, but, you know, I don't know that 50K is.
That was
is-
just a made up
Oh,
number. I don't know the right
okay,
number.
That's fine.
You
Yeah.
say what
I
the right
actu-
number is.
180K, so they would cover the roof.
Well, I know, and I guess, quite frankly, I don't know that I'd want to fully fund something this far in advance, but I would certainly have a recommendation of maybe upwards of 80, you know?
Do we know how much is in there now, what the actual accrued balance is? I think it was around 80 or something.
80 or 90.
Yeah.
And so- and the other thing is if we have a plan, when we think things like the roof are coming, you know, it's in 3 years, then you say, okay, we're gonna either budget for it individually, or we're gonna agree to accumulate to that value. I mean, that's.
Sure. I guess,
that's what having the plan would be
Well-
helpful.
I mean, when it gets down to it, live by the contract that we signed, okay? Do you want me to read it to you?
I've read it before.
The building property repair fund shall have a separate fund, the account, the purpose of maintaining and repairing the emergency service building. Contributions to the account shall be split equally between the municipality. The amount of total contribution shall require approval by both the town and the village. The appropriations for the account shall be restricted to such projects that are approved by the commission and for the purpose of repairing or maintaining the emergency service building. And then it goes on, you know, that we're going to build it, bid it, get as many bids as at least 2. I don't know. I can't give you a guess how much you're going to need in 5 years. You could meet 250,000. I don't know.
Was part of the discussion also that right now, the money that comes out of our, not GPI, but like our general tax, our operating fund, but if it's something capital, like a larger purchase, we might choose to finance it or to purchase it in a different way. And so I think that was, you know, why the ask of, instead of just our general purpose funds going into this, we want to have be able to have the consideration of financing in a different way. And right now it's
well,
coming out of our
wouldn't,
levy. That's what it is.
if you could
You
find
wanted
it,
a capital fund.
I'm not
Or
suggesting what I want,
separate.
but I think that was part of the consideration of why we wouldn't want to necessarily go have this account have, you know, more than $80,000 in it, for example. And then if there's a larger expense, obviously that comes back to each board to fund and
Approve.
finance and approve
Yeah.
how it's best for them. But then we can finance it with what works for us, and you guys can finance what works for you, and not having used the levy funds for many years. I don't know if I'm making sense. I'm looking at
well,
my
part of the thing is too, though,
colleagues.
if you have the ability to say, in this case, $20,000 a year, which we've traditionally been putting forth to it, for especially the way the interest rates are nowadays, isn't it better if you can afford to sock it away? And I don't know, that's an interest-bearing account, isn't it?
Yes.
Make money on your money rather than borrowing at 8 or 7% when you need it, or whatever the economy happens to be back then. I mean, if you can save for a rainy day rather than borrow, why not?
Yeah, and I think we are coming right up to our levy. I mean, like there's been positions we haven't been able to staff for $20,000 out of our levy fund. So I think that like each dollar counts in the year that we're looking at, I think. So
That makes sense. Yeah.
look into my,
How do you fund the maintenance of your other buildings? Your public service on progress or village
it's
hall?
in the budget.
Do you have a 5-year plan?
Mhm.
For each one?
Mhm.
You want to share it with us so
It's
we can have an
all-
example as to how you would like it to be
I think it's,
filled out?
I think for us currently, it's less about this 5-year idea and more just about what is the maximum amount we want to carry in that fund? And if there's a year like this one where if we're at 80,000, that's enough, then we don't each.
I'm just throwing that
need to
out.
levy.
It needed to be more than 50, which I
Sure.
understand that was
Yeah,
just,
mean,
I know.
Now it's 80.
But I would say, why not have it be a maximum of 180 then?
But, and each municipality can sock away, if that's the strategy for the town, you guys can keep putting it aside in an account so that when it comes due, you guys have your money, how you saved it, and the village, because we have to operate differently, we would come up with the money separately, but those don't have to influence necessarily this.
What
fund.
happens if you guys tell us, oh, we can't afford it?
Well, I think it's spelled out in the contract that we, have to
Maintain it.
maintain
Agreed.
we have to maintain the.
Right,
building.
say, God forbid, we'll just say we're just talking about the roof. Seems to be, all right, say there's a catastrophic windstorm and the roof gets ripped off, that rubber membrane, okay? The town has continued using your suggestion when we funded our portion, 20 grand a year or whatever, all right? And say, using that 180,000, all right, the town has its share of $90,000 to repair that roof, either in the fund, we'll say, because obviously
Yeah,
things
you're
are
right.
segregated.
Yeah.
All right, what happens? The village says, oh my gosh, we can't afford it right now because of whatever, kind of thing. What happens then?
Is there anything in the contract, Chris, since you have it there, that suggests I can't imagine we could.
I mean, the village would be able to afford 90,000 because we've got reserve funds that are sitting there that were.
For the property repair fund, it simply says that the amount of total contribution shall require approval by the town and the village.
Right, but does the contract speak to the maintenance of the structures in like, do we agree to maintain the facilities and have a
The
roof?
purpose is for maintaining and repairing the emergency service building.
Right, that's for the
That's it.
fund, but is there another place in the contract that speaks to the village and the town's commitment to actually maintaining the buildings?
No.
I mean, I'm fine with 80,000. That seems reasonable.
What's
I'm
that?
fine
I'm
with
sorry.
80,000, just agreeing that the fund should have at least 80,000. And
Would you mind bumping up to an even 100 just for round number purposes? If we're almost there now, like Chris said. Seriously,
But but that's the minimum, right, we're saying, right, so let's say we need a roof. And now it has to come down to like 10,000, I think us setting, does that make,
No, I don't
Okay.
understand.
well, then we'd be way low and it would we would be out of compliance with our own policy.
Okay, right now, we're both 50/50 on whatever the current balance is right now.
Yeah.
So you don't know anything, we don't know anything, right?
Uh-huh.
Except for 25's contributions, okay? Did you say you were at right about 90, you said?
I think so.
Okay. So I guess a suggestion, whatever that difference is between 100 and where we're currently at, say if it's 10 grand a piece to get us up to that 100K. Is the village able to do that? And we call it square for 2025 as opposed to automatically throwing in 20? And you've not only saved money, but you've also arrived at your desire to have a ceiling at this point in time.
I think a floor is what we're talking about. Having a floor, not a ceiling.
Correct, I'm sorry.
Yeah, maybe
correct,
we
yeah.
need both. I don't know.
Right, yeah, I don't know.
Well, we can bring that back. Obviously, the three of us.
Yeah,
can't
no,
make
no,
that
I
decision
understand, but I'm
tonight.
just saying, I'm just,
Can you give us some rationale to bring to the board why 100K? Just,
Well, we're gonna need 180 for a roof in 3 years.
You're gonna need more than that then, probably.
Well, probably
Yeah.
a lot more. Probably 200.
Yeah, we inflation.
So what do we do then?
That following year's budget takes a hit.
Well,
for
each
each of us.
municipality, right, each municipality, like I said, you guys can keep, squirreling away your money how you would want. And I understand you're saying, what if scenario, the village can't come through, but I think that is far, I don't think that, at least in the near 5 years. Yeah.
So, one thing that we were asked to do, and Deer Grove's commission talked about, was that in the next come up with a plan for the next 5 years for what they think they'll need for the building based on the growth.
Yeah.
And we're kind of doing the same thing. So one of the things that Chief Lang and I kind of talked about was, well, he's thinking sometime in the next 5 years, the growth will be to the point where they might need a second ambulance and more staff. And if the calls keep going up the way they are for us, it might have to shift from being all volunteer to some kind of a staffed model. So if you're talking about doing that, there's a potential that you're gonna have to do some kind of remodel onto the building itself. So would it make more sense to figure out where that is, and rather than put a roof on it and a new generator on it now, and then 5 years from now you do some kind of an addition, would it make more sense to plan on doing an addition, but at the same time rolling in a roof and a new generator and all this stuff when you're doing it as a capital purchase or an addition? And it might not even be an addition. You might decide that based on the growth to the north, you need a different station on the north, like you talked about in the past. It's just, rather than planning on, let's put a new roof on it, then, oh, the building's too small, now we're gonna tear half the roof off and add 100 square feet or, 1,000 square feet or whatever it's gonna be. Maybe a plan for something where you could tie all of it together and do it all at once.
yeah, that's why I was not advocating that we just preemptively replace either or both, it just,
So
When,
that's I like suggestion. It sounds like the balance is at a healthy 90,000. So if in 2025, nobody puts in money, meanwhile, we're looking at the study or the 5-year plan that EMS and fire can put out, or, that present, then we could make a longer range plan that might include some sort of other building, like Chief was suggesting. And then we could maybe then map out how much should each municipality put in. 'Cause anybody else have another?
No, I mean, I think that's a fair assessment. If we're gonna look, if there's a consideration for adding increasing size of the building, then you do the roof at the same time. Unless it blows off, to Steve's point, then you but that's just, something like that happens. you
Then
gotta
insurance
fix
would
it.
help, right?
Not the way insurance is written.
I know.
That's 30 years old.
Talk to the town of Medina. Yeah, they found unfortunately the very hard when the tornado went through their place. So, it's not like it used to be with insurance. Hey, guess what? I get a new roof. No, you don't.
No.
Nowadays, they used, before it was, get your estimates.
They'll probably give you depreciated value, and since
Yes.
it's already 30 years old, they'll say it's at the end of their lifespan, so.
So,
Here's $1.
It's zero,
Yeah.
basically.
All right, so we can take back to the village board the suggestion of 100 rates. Steve, is that what you're saying?
I would say.
Well, I think
Yeah,
what
just
we're,
send
I
it, see if
think,
tomorrow.
I think what we're taking
What's
back
in there?
is, we're not gonna, let's just let the fund be for this year, not set any sort of ceiling or floor at this point. See what the 5-year outlook looks like, and then maybe as we get planning, because it is January, right, like, as we get planning for the budget season for next year, maybe that's when the.
But what about the lights now?
Well, that's next on the
That's
discussion
next
points.
agenda item.
I don't think that's $90,000.
No.
Okay. I like that.
It's really nice
I don't know,
lights.
that's what I heard.
He's all right.
But if folks heard something else, for a note taker here, so
I would appreciate
he
it.
knows what the clear next steps are.
The only thing I've got for next steps is that the chief suggested we come up with some 5-year plan based on the EMS model. That's all that I've gotten for future steps.
No pressure, but how long, when would you say that you could kind of give us that information? No.
No
Yeah, I
pressure.
mean, you know, part of that can be recommendations from us, but part of that's like, you guys, you're probably gonna have to do some kind of a study again, you know, the PAA study is probably coming up to the end of its useful life. It's been a few years now, things have changed. But like, I can't project where the population's gonna be and what that population's gonna do to call 911 and where your best geographic location for a fire station based on ISO scores would be. That's like an engineer would do that, or a planning,
Yep.
you know, so we can say what we think we might need, but, you know, an expert might come in and say, yes, you need that, but you also need this, or no, we don't think you need that, and here's what you need instead. So I think it could be something we could work together on like that, you know?
Definitely worth a discussion.
Okay, so next steps is we'll report that back to the board.
Mhm.
So that's,
And then bring it back
we
here, I guess.
bring it back maybe during budget time? Does that feel?
I know Chris isn't gonna be here.
I won't be here either, so it'll be a whole new crew.
I'll be here.
Okay, Steve. Bring in the historical perspective. Okay. Okay,
I got
so
it.
I don't think we have any motions
No
to
action.
take, no action.
Lively discussion was had
Lively
by all.
discussion had by all. And very agreeable, a very congenial discussion. Okay, so next, the lights. Lighting repairs to the ESB that were previously approved.
So that's, we talked about, we gave quotes to do all the lights in the whole building, and then we picked out, well, here's the really bad areas that should be done immediately. And that was like the EMS offices, the main meeting room, the car garage underneath where car 79 is. And that came out around $5,000 or whatever.
A piece.
That was like for all of it, all three of those
Right.
total.
It was coming out of the repair fund.
And it was supposed to come out of that repair fund, but with the repair fund not being approved I didn't know where it fell. So like, it was approved by this body to do that work. Are we still doing that work? Does it come out of the repair budget? I just wanted to make sure before we just scheduled it or did it. And I was just looking for clarity on it, I guess.
I think if this board approved it to come out of the ESB fund, I think that's where it comes out of.
I guess my thought would be is the bid that we chose, you go back to them, see is it still good for those 3 areas? If it's higher, then it has to come back here.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah, and it's,
So you thought it was what, $5,000, give or take?
I think it was just shy of $5,000.
It was like
and you approved it
49,
for like
80 or
You
something.
approved it for not to exceed of 5,000.
We just said not to exceed 5,000.
It was, electrical solutions, so,
Yeah.
I'm guessing it expired, but they'd probably be willing to work with us wherever it is, but we can
Right.
find out. We can find out for sure, and I can bring that the next time if you'd like.
Either that, or if it's within 5% of the original bid, which is what, $250 off of 5,000? Do we just let them do it? Or do we, how,
How many times do we have to talk about it?
Huh?
How many times do we need to talk about it? If
Yeah,
You're
kind
point about.
Is that, yeah, I mean, that sounds like a motion, Steve.
Well, I don't know, I
to
just,
approve up to
my
10%.
first thought was if it was within 10%, but that's $500, but, you know, I don't know.
But let's say it is $500. Are we gonna say no, don't do it?
Of course not, no, but I'm
Right,
just,
so-
we're delaying it another month from
So
getting
I-
them getting
So
started.
I appreciate your suggestion of do tonight we approve
If it's
10% up to, you know, adding 10% more to our not to exceed
Not
amount.
that we're suggesting they do, but, you know, that'd be my motion.
Okay, I'll second. Motion and a second to increase the amount we approved by up to 10%.
Given the fact that the previous bid had expired
Right, and we need a
and they
rebid.
were the low
I'm
bid
sure
before.
it has.
Huh?
Right.
I'm sure it has expired.
Yeah. Because usually they're 30 days from those
Yeah.
guys.
Yep, all right. Any further discussion on that motion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Abstain? Great. Motion carries. Okay, moving on right along here then to next meeting. Any agenda items that you want to make note of at the moment? And if it's the last Monday in February, I will not be here.
224.
I won't be here. I'm happy to put the agenda together and get it sent out.
So you're telling me.
What's that?
Mr. Williams will be putting the agenda
Well, I'll
together.
put the agenda together. I just
Yeah.
need someone to help lead it. Facilitate it. Yeah,
6:30 on the 24th.
And items, or
I've got the
just-
chief's report.
is it just gonna be up to what you say?
That's right.
Got it?
Update on the lights.
Update on the lights.
Just,
Okay,
that's okay.
you betcha. Anything else?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
All right, motion, sorry, I'm the chair. Motion is second to adjourn. Let's no debate. All those in favor? Aye. Great.
So,
Sure.
okay.
Did you get for the news story? Yes. See you
This
guys.
conference will now be recorded.
We've read it so many times.